Hi, and welcome to another tutorial. I'm Sarah Shira from Imagine Landscapes Designs, and today we are going to be kitchenering the nose of Oh Gnome You Didn't, and also stuffing it ever so slightly. For those of you who struggle with Kitchener stitch, I hope that my explanation helps you remember how to do it without needing to feel like you're doing some kind of Harry Potter magical incantation. So we've got 7 stitches per needle. We've arranged them with Kitchener stitch. It's pretty important to have the same number of stitches on each needle. I'm going to cut my yarn about 6 inches long because this is not a very long Kitchener stitch. If it was longer, I would need more yarn, but I do not. So I'm going to bend my yarn double, pinch it, and then push it through the yarn needle eye. Now I've got my yarn or my nose held so that the working yarn is coming off the back needle. When it comes to Kitchener stitch, there are 2 parts. Each stitch needs to be secured and then it needs to be worked off. On the front needle, we're going to purl stitches to secure them. And on the back needle, we're going to knit stitches to secure them. And if you look at this, it's kind of the opposite. So we're going to be purling on the side where we see stockinette, and we're going to be knitting on the side where we see the purl stitches. So the first stitch we need to secure to start. So I'm going to purl the first stitch there. Then I'm going to knit on the back stitch. And now the first 2 stitches on our needles are secured. So what does Kitchener stitch look like for the rest of the process? So it goes knit off, purl the next one to secure, purl off, knit the next one to secure. And as you can see, I'm kind of making sure that things are in line. Whenever you lay yarn across, it can sometimes kind of catch. So I'm just kind of, checking out my stitches to see how things are going. So we knit off, and then we purl off, and then we knit off, purl off, knit. So I can see that my yarn is kind of catching on those stitches, so I'm just going to pull the corner of the nose out. Those are stitches we've already worked. When I am pulling, I'm trying not to pull too tight or too loosely because we want the size of these stitches to roughly match the size of the stitches elsewhere. We can play with that a little bit at the end, but it's easier to kind of pay attention and to be neither strangling this nor being too loose. So knit off, purl to secure. See what I mean about it getting kind of hooked on the corner there? There. Then we're going to purl off, knit to secure, knit off, purl to secure. All right, one note about the end stitches. We've secured each of them as we worked the stitches before. We, knit off, purled, we purled off and knit. And so obviously all there's left to do is to work them off. There's nothing to secure after this. So it's just simply knit off, purl off, and then the yarn can pass through both of them. Ooh, look at that. Isn't that fun? The nice thing about wool is it doesn't want to go anywhere. So I will just put my yarn tip through, breathing deeply and not freaking out. Find my needle or my yarn end, thread it back through, and everybody's just calm as can be. Although I'm nervous enough that I can't thread my yarn back through. There we go, working those stitches. Now, one thing you will notice with the end of Kitchener stitches, this last little bit here kind of wants to look like, some people call them bunny ears, but they stick out a bit. So the way that I deal with that, and I mean, there are more precise ways to deal with this while working and to set up before this, but this is a toy and this is a very simple fix, is when I plunge my needle back down to deal with this end, I don't go down here, I go down on the other side of this loop that's causing problems. So I will go on the other side of it, just like that, plunge my needle through. And when I do that, I kind of secure that end down, I snug it in, and that bunny ear is gone. Now, If this was a sock, we'd be dealing with this differently, but it's not a sock, it's a gnome nose. So all we need to do is to kind of expose enough of the inside of the fabric here that we see the reverse stockinette. Grab one of our loops. Oh, that yarn is just a little short. It's going to keep popping out. This yarn needle is quite long. It doesn't like to be dealing with these shorter lengths of ends. So I will just have to move more conservatively and less extroverted as I go. So what I want to do is I want to make a loop, and then I want to go through that loop twice. Once, if I was longer, I would use the other side of my needle once, and now see, I did cut that end too short. Look at me. You guys get to watch me not do what I say I should. I think in the pattern I say you should cut it with 8 inches or 20 centimeters of length, and I did not on my own pattern. So anyways, I've gone through that twice. So we've created a knot. I'm going to snug it down with my fingernails just to push it towards the fabric, and then I'm just going to stuff that end back in. It can just act as stuffing. All right. Speaking of stuffing, we need to do a little bit of stuffing. Now don't weave this end in, otherwise you're going to have to join an end and have 2 ends to weave in to attach the nose. So having secured the end just by knotting it and stuffing the end up in there, it's now time to stuff it, and you need very little stuffing. We're not trying to make it stiff and full. We are going to just grab a little bit of stuffing, and we're going to kind of work it down so that it's a little more compact. What we want is something about the same length as the nose, so sort of long, but we want it thin rather than round. All right, so this feels like a little bit too much still, so let's work that down. Then I'm just going to try to stuff this in. If you are finding it a little tricky, one of the best things to do is actually just grab your yarn needle and kind of push it. And what you want to do is make sure that you're pushing it into these corners a bit. So you're just kind of stuffing it down this way and stuffing it in that way. What we want is we want enough stuffing that the nose wants to be kind of curved on the front end, but will lay flat on the back end when it's time to secure it and knit it on. So hopefully that is makes sense to you. We don't want this to be round and big. We've knit it in a way so that it's structured to be oblong. We've sort of want to stuff it so that it doesn't look flat like a duck's bill. So I might stuff just a wee tiny bit more in, like we're talking a very little bit more in. That is even feeling like too much. I might just stuff this wee bit in to kind of plump up the front half, but I'm going to really make sure that it is tucked away from the front. And depending on how things go, I may pull it out. Let's see how this looks. So yeah, I can still get the back here shut. This isn't looking overstuffed and over plump. It's just got barely enough in it to give it a little bit of body. And I've got this shut. So this was a tutorial for the Oh Gnome You Didn't nose. I hope that this tutorial really helped you. And until we meet again in some other tutorial, I wish you happy knitting and happy gnoming. Bye-bye.